that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV.
Joy Reid breaking down in tears over the cancellation of her MSNBC show, The Readout.
Everybody, welcome back. We have special guests with us. Eric Hecker. Who is he?
Give me a moment. There's something weird with
okay.
your
I'm going to fix it.
Okay.
Eric Hecker is a former Navy serviceman at Raytheon. He spent a year at the South Pole, where he says he observed advanced directed energy weapons and other cutting-edge technologies. He has since become a prominent whistleblower, appearing on a range of TV shows and podcasts, confirming the existence of these technologies. Please welcome to the show, Eric Hecker. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Jimmy. Thank you very much for having me today.
So what were you doing in the South Pole?
Maintenance, sir. Basically, my experience is plumbing and heating, but at that facility, I was working in every capacity to fix everything that broke.
And what did you observe?
Basically, I learned that the South Pole Station has 3 separate research systems that I believe should be investigated for their possibilities of directed energy weapons. One being the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector Array, the other one being the ELF system, and then another one being this green laser I observed firing out of a building called ARO, ARO.
So tell me about the first one, the neutrino ice cube detector. What I don't know what that is. Can you explain to me what that is and why is it dangerous?
Certainly. Are you familiar with other research systems referred to as HAARP, H-A-A-R-P?
Yes, I am.
You got it. So let's just take it a step further. The Ice Cube Neutrino Detector Array is like HAARP on steroids insofar as like a HAARP array is on the surface of the Earth and has the dimensions of length and width, and it's just a big phased array antenna assembly. The Ice Cube Neutrino Detector is embedded in the ice. So it adds a third dimension of depth, so giving it an extra magnitude in regards to how phased array transmitters work. And it's in this capacity that I've provided documentation stating that the DOMs, which are these basketball-sized transmitters that are embedded in the ice, there's 5,160 of them. And I went to Washington, D.C. to provide documentation that each one of these can transmit. Thus, we bring it to the final conclusion that this device caused the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand in February of 2011 when they were bringing the system online from construction to operations and maintenance.
So you're saying that the earthquake, these ice cube detecting neutrino, they have the ability to cause earthquakes. In fact, they did cause an earthquake. But before we get there, go ahead and explain to people what HAARP is, because this is a HAARP on steroids. So tell people what HAARP is.
HAARP is referred to as an ionospheric heater. They claim that it's for, studies in the atmosphere, but there's also other research that supports it can be used for like over-the-hill communication systems by bending the ionosphere into like a reflector. So, beaming things around the planet, heating the ionosphere. There's all these conversations contemporarily about global warming, who's responsible for what and what's really going on around us. And I just think I'm unfortunately painting a picture of more nefarious activities than folks may have considered up until this point.
And so they all, correct me if I'm wrong, don't they say they're using HAARP to fight global warming, but it also can be used to heat the atmosphere, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very much speaking with a forked tongue. In one breath, they say they're trying to observe the atmosphere and the environment to make things better, but in another breath, the device itself heats the atmosphere.
Okay, so it seems very nefarious to me, if you ask me. And then they can use global warming as a reason to take away your freedoms, clamp down on you, get you to have digital IDs. They can control how you're spending your money. They can have your own individual carbon footprint. They can turn off your money if you're spending too much stuff on things that cause climate change. But it turns out so they can make this crisis that they can then use for control of people. That's what it sounds like. Just like they did when what was that thing called? Oh yeah, it was called the COVID-19 virus that they invented themselves, tried to hide it, but they couldn't hide it. It got out, and now they admit, okay, we did. And they use that for an unbelievable authoritarian crackdown and complete fascism. Mandated experimental medical devices, experiments being perpetrated on people with no long-term studies whatsoever. And so this is like another one of those things you are positing.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like when it comes to the governments of the world, that the Hegelian dialectic has never been not trendy.
I don't know what that is. What is the Hegelian dialectic?
The Hegelian dialectic is problem, reaction, solution.
Okay.
Where basically when written, it was a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So basically, you have something you want to, accomplish on the general population, i.e. COVID, like you just said, or I should say the vax. So you create the problem, you appreciate and understand the reaction that people will have to the problem you created, and then you present them the predetermined solution that you already had at the ready that nobody would have wanted until such time the problem presented itself. A perfect example of this in our history would be 9/11. Nobody wanted the Patriot Act, but they created a problem, they understood the reaction, and then they just slammed down on the table the solution.
And they had the ideas for the Patriot Act way before 9/11, and they needed something like that so they could implement it. Just like
Absolutely.
just like they needed something like 9/11, so they could give the power to the president and take the power away from the Congress to go commit to start wars anywhere the president wants to, which is how we got into Iraq, which is how we got into Libya, which is how we got into Syria, Sudan, Yemen right now. They're using all of that every time. Afghanistan, the Congress is not declaring war. What they do is the president is going to fight terrorism, and he can do that under the guise of the Patriot Act because now he's fighting terrorism, and the president doesn't need approval from Congress to do that. So basically, turning hundreds of years of established law in the United States on its head because of 9/11, right. And now there's no accountability for any of these foreign wars, and Trump was elected to end these foreign wars, and he's ramping them up, and he's not exposing this. So let's just go before we get into 9/11. I want you to talk about talk about the earthquake and how these things created earthquake, and how did you catch on to this?
Basically, like a sponge, I walked around the facility while I was there, but it wasn't until years later when I became aware that myself and some of my crew were having health issues, and we had conversations. And it was at that point I started to learn what was really going on in the facility, getting deeper into connecting the dots for the things that I'd seen in the South Pole. And, other facilities that I had worked at previously had given me, pause. That's what's really going on around us. And when I started to connect the dots and was, finding the literature that showed that this science existed, it kind of freaked me out and honestly got me really mad because it became obvious to me that there were many people above myself and my crew at the South Pole Station that knew the harm that they were putting us in front of in regards to the proximity to these technologies. So it was at that time, I would say I think it was about 2016, 2018 that I started really connecting the dots and thought to myself that, something has to be done about this. Justice is required for myself and my crew. And additionally, now that I'm seeing these technologies kind of spreading out through society, I'm very concerned as to, what the future of this planet looks like if these monopolized technologies continue to move forwards unregulated.
So how did you connect the neutrino ice cube detector to the earthquake generation and the earthquake in New Zealand?
Through learning that it had the capacity to do it, and then through speaking with former crew members who basically, I guess you would say, read me into what was going on when we were discussing the health issues. It was obviously, I knew when I was there that there were people operating, under, false pretenses. So when this conversation came around, I just kind of was pressing folks like, I'll let you know what I know. Obviously, you're asking. I said, but I want reciprocity. I want to know everything too. So it was at that point I became more aware. And so
why didn't New Zealand blow the whistle on this? Why did they just accept it?
I have no idea. I can't speak for New Zealand, but I have spoken openly. I have had, I guess you'd say, reporters or podcasters from New Zealand reach out to me. I have been actively involved trying to get the information out. Why it's not being received properly, I can only presume, is to the copious amounts of money being invested in, the sham government UFO disclosure.
And you and your crew had experienced illnesses just by being in proximity to these weapons.
Yes, sir. These are RF frequency emitting systems that, under normal circumstances, people would not be allowed to be in proximity. But because they're secreted and compartmentalized and being disingenuous about the activities, we found ourselves, I guess you would say, in a situation of expendability.
Well, just like RFK revealed on the Joe Rogan podcast, that even something as simple as your own Wi-Fi in your house has the ability to screw with the mitochondria in your brain, and it can pass through the blood-brain barrier of your brain. Also, 5G, and the head of the Human Health Services agency is now saying that the RF radio frequencies from your cell phone could actually cause cancer, and so. What you're talking about, so that's on a very small scale, but what you're talking about is something that's like that, but on steroids, right?
massive. The ice cube array is literally a kilometer by a kilometer by a kilometer. It's huge. The ELF system supposedly is miles of antenna wire also embedded in the ice beneath the facility that we were, living and working atop. So we were, I guess you would say, in the firing line.
And tell me how you connected this to. Now, we've reported on this. There was a lot of people who were working at the U.S. Embassy in Cuba saying that, that they were having all these problems. They were hearing voices. And then the CIA came out and said that it's called Havana syndrome. And then the CIA said that was all a conspiracy theory, didn't exist, except they paid off all those people. Those people were able to get damages for being injured that way. So is this connected to the Havana syndrome?
Absolutely. And this they keep passing this one back and forth over the net, so to say. The DoD provided a document, which I put in the archive section of my website, which states the proper pathway for their employees and the families of the employees to report symptoms of Havana syndrome, because that's their employer. So they're obliged to take care of their medical needs. So the DoD has basically confirmed the existence by, giving a paperwork trail for their employees to get it mitigated.
And so are they using that technology just in Cuba on the people, or are they using that on people in the United States too?
When I went to Washington, D.C. to testify in two separate skiffs in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee and AARO, AARO, at the end of the conversations, we basically were having a discussion about what do we do now that there are these rogue factions running around without oversight. Nobody seems to know who or how many. It's my belief that we should err on the side of caution and consider that there's a lot more people up to these nefarious activities that are wielding these technologies around us. And I believe there is a new form of modern war going on that is above and beyond nation states and is almost at the level of just like military industrial complex corporations fighting each other through the puppetry of the geographical boundaries and nation states. Now,
didn't Trump kind of allude to this, that we have weapons that you can't believe? And then also a spokesperson for the White House came out shortly thereafter and said that we can manipulate space-time. Is this all going? So did they kind of let on to this, that they have this technology?
Exactly. This is all coming to a head right now because, like Hal Puthoff said on Joe Rogan, you just can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. This locomotive is coming full steam ahead as much as everybody wants to stop it. But yes, those statements made by Donald Trump and the other gentlemen in the administration are alluding to the fact that technology has advanced, very especially in the last 3 to 4 decades, at a level that has not been communicated to the general population. There's a technocracy, as Alex Jones puts it.
And so, what would, like, if they were using, so what caused Havana syndrome? Would that be considered a direct energy weapon?
Yes, sir. Correct. And there are many types of directed energy weapons. Each directed energy weapon is kind of multifaceted, and the people wielding them love these because the powers that be always love the concept of plausible deniability. Right. Anybody in the military has heard this time and time again. They don't use anything unless it has layers of plausible deniability.
Now, about a year and a half ago, I was contacted by one of the former top codebreakers at the NSA saying he was being a victim of this type of direct energy weapon and that they were implanting thoughts in his head. Tell me how that works.
I mean, to me, I find this stuff super simple, right? Like radio waves are just simply transmissions through the invisible atmosphere, frequencies.
Right.
Our brains, when we think, are just simply other frequencies and impulses. They have a signature, They can be listened to. They can be tuned into. They can be transmitted back to. Information can be sent back on that frequency. It's just simply it's like how radios work, but just on different frequency bands and hardware. This time, we're the hardware. It's just eavesdropping by listening into that frequency. You've been in radio for a while. Like if you have one transmission station and another transmission station, and the receiver is in between, whichever station is powering up higher, it's going to get the signal. There's options here. So basically, the person is just simply like an antenna that can be messed with. And in antiquity, these were techniques. Somebody could throw their voice. Somebody could mimic you. If you didn't know somebody had that technique, if you were completely unaware, imagine the power that person with that technique could wield in a room. If he could mimic your voice and say things and make you think it's coming from you, those are just simply intrusive thoughts.
So they can make you.
Now we have technologies that do that. It's just mimicking an ancient technique. In the mystery schools of old, they said, know thyself, because you never know when a magician might be by there, mimicking and throwing voices around, applying technique. Contemporarily, do people know thyself? Would it be possible for somebody to clone someone off of the metadata gathered that's wholly available and pretend an AI variant of someone, and then take that AI variant of someone, apply the mimicked voice, and just retransmit it back? And now you apply intrusive thoughts from many different clones of the AI variants that I could make of Jimmy Dore. And now every time you go to make a decision and you have that normal thought process in your head, should I do this? Should I do that? Effectively, the different voices in your head of yourself. If I have this technology, I can now intrude that conversation with AI versions of you that are just sounding like you, coming up with different options, but I can make those my options. Like, hey, maybe it's not such a big deal to put a mask on. Right? So I did that, and if I had a mic and a speaker in your head, and I could sound like you, I could absolutely influence you. It's not control, but I could influence you. I could just sit there all day long. Everybody's wearing a mask. What's the big deal?
So those are the kind of thoughts they could put in your head. Okay.
And it would matter over time. I mean, we know propaganda. We know the television. We know the power of repetition.
Yes. And so, we had Dane Wigington on just earlier this week, and he showed us how they've been controlling the weather and had the ability to control the weather for decades and decades. They had patents on controlling the weather going back over 100 years, not just plans, but patents. And that the Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, on the floor of the United Nations, said that they were weaponizing this against his country, creating a once in a 1,000-year famine on Iran. And of course, that didn't get reported in the U.S. press because it's owned by the same people doing those things. The military-industrial complex, the handful of billionaires. There's only 6 companies that own all the media in the United States, and they control everything. And just like YouTube is owned by Google, which is an intelligence community cut out, invented by them, works hand in glove with the CIA and people like Palantir, and they can suppress this show. They'll probably suppress this video. And so to the people watching, it's super important that you make sure you're subscribed, because they unsubscribe us. Make sure you like it. Make sure you share this video, because when I had Robert Malone on at the beginning of the COVID crisis, and he came out and explained to us about the vaccine, what it was really about, that it was a leaky vaccine, that it didn't stop transmission or contraction, that you can't get yourself out of this pandemic with this vaccine, they suppressed that video unbelievably. In fact, and it still got 800,000 views. It should have got 80 million views, but it didn't, because if you go on YouTube and you Google Jimmy Dore Show, Dr. Robert Malone, it does not come up. You have to go off of YouTube. You have to go on another a search engine that is not Google, and then it will come up. But if you go on Google, if you go on YouTube, it does not come up. They have buried that, right? So they control everything. They control the news, and now they have a way to put thoughts in your head. And again, like I told you about a year and a half ago, I was contacted by the most famous code breaker at the NSA for decades, and he said that they were using these weapons on him, and I thought he was crazy. And I said, if I tell anybody this, they're going to say I'm nuts. So I'm sorry, I can't help you. So let's get and you talk about plausible deniability. So Elon Musk is now with his Neuralink, right? So it makes you so now is that part of a cover story where you have to have a thing implanted in your head, Jimmy, for them to do this. But you're saying that's not true, right?
You hit the nail on the head. I agree with you 1,000%. I believe that the whole Neuralink conversation is an operation to make everybody believe that the connection can only be made wirelessly from another location into your head, into their hardware, as if they need the hardware.
And they don't.
Right. I do not believe that they do. I believe the hardware is on everybody's hip or in their hand. It's the cell phone.
Well, you know what?
They're already getting biometrics off of the cell phone. They already are taking your respiratory rate. They're already paying attention to your circulation. They're already calculating when the next post that you look at gets you excited or upset. You know what? They're already gauging all of this.
I saw Jay Leno at a comedy club the other night, and he said, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I'm sitting on the toilet. I look at my cell phone, and up comes an ad for toilet paper. How do they know? Which is a funny joke. But here, let me just show you. Here's a guy who's talking a little bit about how your phone in your pocket can be used as direct energy weapon. Let's listen.
It goes deep. I mean, all this climate change stuff. I mean, come on. It's geoengineering. It's been going on since the 60s. They've been controlling the weather. There's no such thing as climate change. Stop messing with the world. Stop messing with God's nature. The artificial lighting, they banned the incandescent light bulbs. Why do you think they did that? Because the blue lights, everything is, you notice how everything is being smart now? Like smart washing machine, smart this, smart that in your house. You know why that is? Because they want everybody connected to the cloud. It's human 2.0. And we're just going, oh, wow, it's smart. That's pretty cool. That's a good name for it. Actually, you know what cell phones and cell phone towers should be called? What the real name is, according to the DoD documents? Directed energy weapons. That's what they are. Your router, your cell phones, 5G towers, they're directed energy weapons. You can pull up all this. I've got all the links on here. You can see it all for yourself. But basically, they engineer the media, they engineer everything. And I really believe, we believe that they got so scared because so many people are waking up and did wake up during the pandemic, that's why they're escalating everything, and they're just basically throwing everything at it because they realize that they're losing right now. But we want to protect everybody and keep everybody healthy and keep everybody safe, right? The vectors that they're using, that we've identified, they're using artificial light, they're using fear, obviously, they're using parasites, they're using these bioweapons, they're using venoms, they're using different types of altered RNA and DNA, they're using electronic magnetic warfare, they're using the directed energy weapons, they're using nanotech, they're using plasmas, they're using lipid nanoparticles, polymers and plastics inside your body, microplastics, hydrogels. I mean, all of this stuff. How many people do you hear actually talking about all this?
So what would you say to that?
I couldn't argue with a bit of it. I think he's somebody who's done some research and just realizes that, there's other people that have been investing, at this stage of the game, billions of dollars into the research. There's a paperwork trail. Even earthquake inducement. There's all kinds of research that can be looked up. They've been looking into manufacturing earthquakes for decades. Why? If they don't intend to do it, it would be like saying they've been looking into designing guns for decades. You think we wouldn't have any guns laying around anywhere? If someone said, "No, we don't have that capacity. We're just looking into it. We can't do it, but we're just looking into it a lot. We're going to spend a few more millions of dollars in looking into it some more."
So one thing that I think people are waking up to is that the narrative around 9/11 has been concocted, right?
God, I hope so at this stage of the game.
Right. So we brought on the head engineer professor from the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and he showed to us, proved to us that there's no way Building 7 came down because a plane hit another building 100 yards away.
Right. There's so many ridiculous things to consider when it comes to 9/11 to even begin to take it as was presented at face value at the time.
And so here's one of the head architects, Richard Gage. He says, "Be careful when going down the 9/11 rabbit hole. As we've documented, the video and forensic evidence points to explosives as incendiaries, not direct energy or nuclear weapons." So he's saying, so we know that about 9/11. I know that about Building 7 for sure. For sure, we know that was not the story, what the government gave us, or so here is this is an example. Direct energy weapons. The fires in Israel seem to be coming from the inside of these trees, burning from the trunks toward the branches. That does look weird, right?
It does look weird, but it could be a lightning strike for all I know.
Okay, all right, could be. All right, that's a good point. All right, that's it. So, what else haven't I covered on this?
Well, in regards to 9/11 and directed energy weapons, one of the connections I always enjoy was that's referenceable was up until September 10th. There was a massive hurricane inbound to Manhattan, and then it just stopped dead out in the Atlantic before it hit Manhattan. And then we got September 11th, which was obviously everyone remembers was crystal clear blue skies. So the event went on as planned. And then apparently the hurricane that was bearing down on Manhattan that parked in the middle of the Atlantic then returned back on its original course. I would say that was the application of the weather modification systems, which is directed energy weapons. And this shows how they use these things like a tool in their toolkit to accomplish their chess games.
So you're not saying that they used directed energy weapons on the buildings themselves. You're saying that they used it, just like we all know now, that they can modify the weather, that they used it to modify the weather of that hurricane.
They've been modifying the weather we know of in battlefield circumstances since Vietnam, when they were trying to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail to slow down the logistics of the North Vietnamese.
Yeah, that's pretty well documented, by the way.
Right. So the motive has always existed for the military and the research to be like, it's one thing to get onto the battlefield, the arena, and have the best team and win. It's another thing to show up to that battlefield and that arena and be able to set the parameters for the battlefield and the arena, which is weather manipulation, and that's freaking huge. And so,
are you? I have to ask this question. Are you afraid for your safety? Have they tried to do something to you?
I can only say that with great regularity, things are attempted to be done to me. Things are done to me. I don't fear living a righteous life is the only way I can look at it. I do what needs to be done, and that's appropriate. What circumstances? come of that, that's just called life.
And so do you have, so if people are interested in this type of thing and they think you're onto something, where can they go to find more information?
If anybody wants to follow along what I'm figuring out, they can go to my website, please, at deciphering.tv. There is an archives section there that I put information in so that, when people say, where's the proof? Take a look in the archive section, there's documentation. And I have a whole bunch of videos from other folks that I try to connect dots with to paint a bigger picture of what's really going on around us on this planet.
And that's deciphering.tv?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I saw you on another show. I saw you on Redacted. That's how I became aware of you. Of course, Kurt Metzger was aware of you a long time ago. He's onto this kind of stuff. And then I saw your interview on Redacted, and it just kind of blew my mind. So I really appreciate the work that they're doing over at Redacted, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you saw at the South Pole. And it's very scary. So Eric, I appreciate you very, very much. Eric Hecker, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Hey, Jimmy, are you ready to go to Rumble only, or you want to do one more story?
Do we have anything to read?
Oh, yeah, I have things to read.
Go ahead, read some stuff.
All right, you got it. Okay, let me put that all there.
What'd you think of that, Misha? I think it's crazy. It's depressing, yeah. Glad you don't have kids. I don't know either. I wish I had kids. Yeah.
I know. We're live.
Let's go. We could. I heard the Robert F. RFK says that the government's involved in child trafficking. Maybe we could pick up a couple of kids.
Okay, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Duly noted, Jimmy the Dore to your mind. Jimmy, please take off. I think you meant take or talk. Please talk about the woman assaulted by Zionists in New York over the weekend.
I know.
Send them to El Salvador.
Can I tell? Hang on one second.
No,
hold on.
Back. All right, here we go. Next one.
So
back
come
to Jimmy.
me. So let me just tell people that, yes, I wanted to cover that story about the Zionists in Crown Heights attacking a single woman, spitting on her, and they had, they gave her one cop that walked by her. They were attacking her. There are at least 15 stories a day that are outrageous, that are concerning Zionism, what Israel's doing in Gaza, what the United States is doing for Israel. There's at least, right now they've been starving the people of Gaza for 2 months. And it's like I have to create a whole nother show just to cover that topic, because there's so many outrageous, mind-blowing things, that story being one of them. There's video of it happening. Nobody did. So if there's anybody who needs protection, it's people who need protection from Zionists. The Zionists are the people that are controlling our government. That is AIPAC. Those are the people in control of Donald Trump and our State Department and everybody else inside his administration right now, including the people at the HHS and the NIH. They now make it, you have to go along with the Zionist narrative, or they're going to cancel your research grants. What's happening is crazy. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. I would love to have time to cover that. So I can't, I've got at least 3 stories today about Israel in the show. I don't want it to become the Israel Gaza Zionism report. Even though it's like, I was talking about this with my producer Malcolm this morning. He's like, well, if it was 1943 and we're like, I don't want to cover the Holocaust. It's just too much with the Holocaust already. I feel a responsibility to cover it. And I cover it as much as I think I can, without it just taking over the whole show. So thank you for recommending I cover that story, but every day there's 15 stories just as horrible as that. Did you see that? Who was that English guy who just did a documentary? Louis Theroux, is that his name? He's the guy who did the, anyway, he did it. It's an hour-long documentary about just how psychopathic the settlers are in the West Bank and how they don't see Palestinians as human beings. And it made a little bit of a buzz on social media, but of course it's being suppressed. And so there's just so many things. By the way, I found out that guy follows me. Yeah. He said, hey, what's that song? He did a rap, driving in my driving in a compact. Anyway, I'll think of it. Over to Steph.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And that was Louis Theroux?
Yeah.
The Settlers?
I think that's his name.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right. Somebody, the Auspicious. Thank you, Auspicious, for noting that in the chat right now. If you want to know why any president doesn't keep their campaign promises, just listen to Bill Hicks' bit, Presidential Agenda. Sherelle, look at you. How's it going, Sherelle, girl? Okay. Vienticus Prime, it's DEI 2.0, where DEI now stands for Don't Expose Israel.
Right?
Vienticus, nice work on that one. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Fancy Vagina Friday. We're always happy to see you. Thank you so much. Hey, Goo81 Haaretz reported that settlers caused the wildfires as they wanted Palestinians to flee in the West Bank. Instead, the fires spread to Israel due to planting of non-native trees to cover the Nakba crime. Goo81, thank you for that.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Those fires were big too.
Oh my gosh, they looked almost like God sent them. Is this Kama Shark / White Gladys 28 Goo81? We fucking love you, Jimmy Dore. Speaking the truth. More power to you, Outlaw Video TV. Thank you for that, bitches. Hey, Trump could not hold his bullshit for an hour at the Alabama commencement last night. He'd rather talk about eggs and illegal immigrants. Sounded like a military recruitment gathering. Texas grown.
My money don't jiggle jiggle. It folds.
Show Jimmy.